Okay, so welcome to your portfolio tutorial. So what we're going to do is compose the portfolio in InDesign. So if we open up InDesign, right here, the first step we got to do is create a document. So over on the left-hand side, I'm going to click Create New, and then in here, I'm going to go over to where it says Print. And in here we want to define the units for our document. So I'm going to go over to where it says units, change into inches. We're going to define our sheet size. So the requirement for the assignment is 8.5 by 11. So set the width to 8.5, height by 11. And then we can also set up our margins. So down here where it says margins, I'm going to change this to 1/4 of an inch. So that's roughly what you can, how close you can get to the edge with most printers. And then I also want to change my inside margin to 0, and I'll explain why once I create the document. But first I have to click Unlink, and I'll change the inside to 0. Okay. I'm also going to add a few more pages, so I'll set that to something like 4. Okay, and then I'll click Create. Alright, so now this is our document. If you scroll through, you see we have 4 pages. So the reason that I set the inside margins to 0, and you can see that the margins are these magenta and purple lines, and we want the inside margin set to 0 because the way we're going to print this is we're going to print what's called the spread, meaning 2 pages at once. And so if we have images that are going across those 2 pages, we don't want any margins in between. Okay, so now that we've created our document, the first thing will be to create a cover page. So I'm going to go to my first page, and what I want to do is just set out the information that I need to show on my cover page first. So I'm going to go over to the Type tool, make a text box. So there's 4 pieces of information that you're required to have. It's your name, the school, the title of the portfolio, and the date or the year. So what I'm going to do first is just make one text box, and before I make the rest of the information, I want to edit the properties of this text. So I'll select my text, go up here to the font selection, and I am going to use Source Sans Pro. And I'm going to set this one to maybe extra light. And then I'm also going to bump up the size of this font. So I'm going to set it to 30. It looks pretty good. And I'm also going to change what's called the tracking. So if I hover over this little icon here, you should see it says tracking. And all that means is it's like the distance between the letters, so the distance that they're spaced out. So I'm going to set that to 100. Okay, so now I have one that's kind of roughly set up. What I'm going to do is just copy it 3 more times and enter the rest of the information. So just like in Illustrator, I can drag it, hold Alt on the keyboard, and I should see a little double arrow cursor pop up, and then release. So I made a copy. So I'm going to do 2 more. Okay. And then actually, I'm going to do 3 more. So I want to enter all the pertinent information. So like I said, I want to enter the name of the school, University of Arizona. College of Architecture, title of my portfolio, so you can say, I'm just going to use the word portfolio, and then a date or the year. So that's all the information that needs to be included on my cover page. And what I want to do is make a graphic out of this information. So I'm just going to do something really simple. I'm going to kind of use this image from our lecture as a reference and just kind of compose the information. I'm going to change the properties of the font and the type in order to kind of get this graphic hierarchy going. So let's see. So maybe I'll start with this. Oops. So in order to edit the properties of the font once it's created, all I got to do is again select it. Again, select the type tool. And then I can easily go through and start to play with the properties of this. So what I want to do here is like create some kind of hierarchy between the information. So some stuff needs to get bigger, some stuff needs to get smaller. And I'm just going to play around and kind of find something that I think works visually. So I'm really just editing the size of the font and the tracking. And I'm going to try and start to do this composition. Something like that. Let's line up this with the portfolio. So I can also play with like the kind of weight of the font. So I'm going to go all the way from bold to regular to light. Let's try maybe regular. And then I'm also going to kind of edit these letters individually to make this a little more coherent. Maybe I'll just go bump up the tracking a little bit. Okay. Maybe we can make this line up right there. I'm just going to kind of play around until I find something that looks right, that looks balanced, that's sort of visually engaging. Okay, and you will notice that in InDesign, when you're composing stuff, often you'll get like these blue boxes. And so in InDesign you can kind of toggle back and forth between like a low quality preview of your layouts and of your font and a high quality. And what I want to do for the most part is stay on low quality, right? Because it's going to make my computer run faster and smoother. But for when I want to kind of check how my work is looking, I want to be able to toggle into a higher quality. And so the way to do that is to go to View up at the top and to use this option Overprint Preview. And I can toggle this on and off, and you'll see the outlines will go away. So now I can get a little bit better sense of how everything is lining up. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. Obviously you can go whichever way you want with it, but just kind of play around until it looks like kind of a nice, well-balanced graphic. Okay, so once we've developed our cover page graphic, then we're going to go ahead and move on to our table of contents. In the table of contents, first of all, we need to make a title. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this bit of text down to next page. I'm going to leave page 2 blank and just use page 3 because what I want is for you to open the book and just see the table of contents and then have to fold again to get to the first project. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this solid light. Okay. I'll change this to table of contents. And again, I'm going to go back to view and turn off overprint preview just so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Can maybe bump down the tracking on this guy. Okay. So I have a title from the table of contents. And what I also want to do is enter in here kind of a little brief bit of information on each project that I'm going to put in the document and what page it's on. So again, if you refer to your assignment sheet, you're required to have, let's see, project title, so the name of your project, the title of the studio, and the page number. So I'm just going to make something up. And again, I want to kind of develop a graphic hierarchy here. To start to convey the significance of the information. Okay, so I'm going to bump this font way down. And I believe this project is called now you can also, I just want to point out, as you're resizing these text boxes, you can double click on the little grips in order to get them to stack to like the height of your text, which will be helpful when you're laying things out so you can kind of set them edge to edge. I'm also going to make this a little bit heavier, maybe turn down some of the tracking. So again, I'm just trying to kind of develop this graphic hierarchy. Maybe something like that. So I got the title of the project, the name of the class, and the name of the project. So this is a title of your own creation. This is whatever you're calling your project. And I also, of course, want to say what page it's on, so I'm going to make another quick copy. So this is going to be starting on page 4. And again, I can kind of preview how this looks, so maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and let's say I also wanted to make this like a little bit gray. So I can select this guy. If I want to change the color of my font, I'm going to open up the color panel. So I go to Window, Color. There's two that you really want open. One of them is Color. That's this guy. You should be used to that from Illustrator. And the other will be Swatches. So once again, it's just like if you're using certain colors in your document and you want to save them, you can kind of drag them from your color panel down to your swatches and save those colors. So I'm going to set this in my panel. Okay, and in order to edit the color of a text item, I just have to select it. So you'll see that both the fill and the stroke are empty. So I want to affect the text itself. So I'm going to click on this little T. You can see that it's set to 100% black. So maybe change that to 60 or something like that. So now it's got a little bit of grayness to it. And then I could just make a copy of this and set out what my other projects are. So this is the domestic domain, and so on and so forth. Okay. So what I want to do now that I kind of have, let's say, a graphic convention established in terms of like the weights of the fonts that I'm using, what I want to do now is create a character style. So it's important that whatever fonts you're using, whatever properties they have, you're consistent about the use of those fonts throughout the document. So now that we've kind of established a little bit what some of those fonts might be, we want to save them so that we can easily apply them later or update them all at once. So if I go to Window, I'm going to go to Styles, and I'm going to open the panel called Character Styles. So in here, I can define like styles of text. So for example, if I go in here and select this text, go to my Character Styles panel and click New Character Style. So it should automatically have that character style. And if I double click on it, you can see I can go in here and I can see what all those properties are that I've defined. And so now I want to also apply that to the other titles I have, and I want to give this a name. So I'm going to call this Titles, or Title 1, because we want to use a few different weights of title. And then in here I'm going to go and select this font, make a new one, apply it to both, and also change the name of this, call that Title 2, and I want to do the same for this font. I'll call that Title 3. Okay, and the kind of beauty of this is not just that we can easily apply it later, but it's also that we can easily update it. So if we get to a point in the document, in the design, where we want to change the properties of one of these, again, we can just edit the style. So if I double click on that style, go to Basic Character Formats. If I thought this should be a little bit lighter, I can bump it down a little bit, and you'll see that all the text that has that style applied will automatically update to reflect that change. So it's a really useful tool for working efficiently. Okay. So what we want to do now, once we have our table of contents, we're going to move on to the next page, begin to lay out our first project. So before I do that, what I want is to create like a template that's going to be applied to every page. So in InDesign, this is done through what's called a master spread. So in our Pages panel, you'll see up at the top there's another little zone. So in here, those are all the pages in my document. Shows you a little preview of the information. Above that, you'll see a section where it says master. So by default, there's one master spread. And so what I can do is double click on that master spread, and I can edit it. And so every time all the information I put on the master spread will be applied to all the pages that the master spread is applied to. So again, if you refer to your assignment sheet, there's a few bits of information you're required to have kind of in the header and footer of your pages. So I'm going to go on my master spread, and I'm going to define a few bits of information. So one of those bits again is my name. I'm going to restate the year. Let me just go back to turn off overprint. And then I also need to show the page number so people can easily navigate. So I'm going to set all these boxes in the top right, top left, bottom right, bottom left. Okay. So in order to enter a page number, it's pretty easy. So what I'm going to do is enter what's called a text variable. So I'll say page, put a space in, and then I'm going to go up here to the menu, type, insert special character, markers, current page number. And you'll see it'll enter like a little variable. And I want to do the same over here, so page, space, type, special character, markers, current page number. And so InDesign will automatically reference the page number from your document, and it will enter that number on that page. So we can apply this template to all the pages, and it will automatically number our pages for us. The other thing I want to do is kind of edit this text so that it's justified. So again, I placed all these text boxes in the kind of corners of the pages. So I'll select one. Up here you can see there's like a text alignment option. So right now it's set to align to the top of the text box. I'll set it to bottom for these two page numbers. And then for these two, I want to align to the right side of the box. So I'll select them. I'll select the type tool. And then you'll see the align right and left options pop up. And I'll go align right. So now they're set in the four corners of my spread. And what I'm also going to do now is define a new character style. So I'll select all four at once, go to my character styles, make a new one, and then in here I'm going to enter, like, this is my header, footer information, and I'm also going to make this text a lot smaller. Okay, that way it has a kind of lighter graphic to it. Okay, so now if we go back out, or no, sorry, there's a couple things we got to do first. So one thing that I really recommend is to use guides. So again, in the lecture we talked about, like how do you divide up the space on the page? How do you use a consistent layout across the pages and across your projects to kind of tie it together in one composition? So I'm going to just use a really, really simple kind of few lines, guidelines. So I'm going to drag down from the rulers. If you don't have rulers, you can hit Control-R on the keyboard to turn them on and off. So I'm just dragging from the ruler out. You'll see that the little text box next to my cursor is going to show me like kind of where my lines are placed. So I'm just going to kind of divide up, I'm going to divide up these pages so that I have kind of layout that I can reference across every page and use kind of a relatively consistent breakdown of my paper space. So that's one thing. I have this kind of set of guidelines laid out, and make these a little lower actually. I'm also on here going to lay out some holes. So with a saddle stitch, what you want to do is you want to print out all these pages, and then you'll have to like sew them together like a booklet, like the binding in a booklet. So what I want to do is print on each spread kind of where those holes are going to be, so that I can line them up page to page and easily sew them together. So I'm just going to make a little circle. So I go up to the top. I'm going to start right on the corner of my margin. I'm going to hold Shift to keep it proportional. So maybe make it that big. Or maybe I have to make it a little bigger. There we go. And again, I want to set the properties of this guy so that it's just showing me the fill, not the outline. So if I go over to Color panel, all I want to do is swap the fill and the stroke. Okay, so now I have one little hole laid out. So what I'm going to do is copy and paste it a bunch of times. And then I'm going to space them and line them up. So let's say if I have an 8.5 by 11 sheet and I want a hole every ½ inch. So if I multiply 11 by 2, that would be 22 holes. So we'll copy, paste. So I copied and pasted 22 times. Now what I want to do is take just one of these little holes, and I'm going to place it at the other end of my, my layout. So I want to place it all the way down at the bottom. And just kind of place it right on the same spot. So centered on the middle of the spread and on the two margins. Okay. And now I can easily lay them all out if I just select them all. So I hold Shift. So now they're all selected. And then what I want to do is align and distribute them. So just like I would in Illustrator, I'm going to go to Window, go to Object and Layout, and open my Align panel. So the first thing I want to do is align them all to that center line. So I've got align left edges. So now they're all in a row. The next thing I want to do is distribute them, right? So I want them evenly spaced from the top and the bottom. So I'll go to Distribute Objects, Distribute along the vertical centers, and then it will evenly lay out all my little holes for binding. Okay, I might actually kind of scale those up a little bit. I think they might not show up when I print. So if I go select them all, go to Transform, go to Scale, maybe I'll double them in size. Okay, so you have to actually do this before. You have to do this before you distribute them, because if I scale them by 200, they'll fall off the layout. So I'm going to quickly do that. So I will pause and be right back. Okay, So I've scaled them up to about a 32nd of an inch, so they're a little more visible. The other thing that I want to do is lay these holes out so that they're easily visible, even when I have an image that's going across 2 pages. So I'm going to do 2 things. One is I'm going to change the color of them. So again, if I select them all, go to where it says fill, and I'm going to go down in my swatches and just apply a red color. So whatever color you think won't contrast with images that are on your layout. So I'm going to make mine red. And I also want to put it on a separate layer. So just like in Photoshop or Illustrator, we have layers in InDesign. So I'll go to Window, Layers to open the Layers panel. And in this Layers panel, stuff that's on a layer that's higher will show up on top. So I'm going to make a new layer, layer 2, and I'm going to put just those holes on that layer. So just like in Illustrator, I can click and drag the little square. You can see that now they're on that new layer, and because that layer is on top, it'll always print on top of whatever I put on my pages, as long as I'm working on layer 1. Okay, so this is our template. We've kind of laid everything out. So what I want to do now is go back to my document. So I'll go in the Pages panel and I'll just double click on one of my spreads, one of my pages. And you can see that it has applied this template to every single one of my pages. Now, I actually don't want this to be applied to my cover page. So I'm going to make quickly another master spread that I can apply to the cover page that will give me the holes but not the header and footer or the layout. So again, in the master spread, I'll hold Shift, select both pages on my A master, right click, and go to Duplicate Master Spread. So now I have another master spread. On this guy, I want just the holes, so I'm going to delete all my guidelines. And my header and footer. I'll go back to my cover page, and you can see in the Pages panel there's like a little letter next to on the corner of each page, and that's telling me A master has been applied to this page. So all I got to do is select my B master, drag it onto that page. You should see the little number change, and now we have our holes, but we don't have our header footer. So now that we've set up our template, we're going to go ahead and lay out the first project. So what I want to do again is make some text objects. So this is project 1, this is my light pavilion. And I'm going to go to character styles. I'm going to apply my title to the title. And I'm going to set that up on the corner of my guidelines. So again, I want to be sure I'm doing this in a consistent way. I also want to, on my cover page, or I'm sorry, on the title page for this project, I want to give myself some space for just some descriptive text. So if you have a brief couple of paragraphs that kind of describe your project, you want to put that on this page. So I'm also going to make a new character style for that. So I'll make a new one. I'm going to call this just text. I'm going to make this a smaller font. And I'm going to lower the tracking. Okay. So now I have a new character style established. Again, I want to apply that to this text box, and for now what I'm going to do is go to type, and I'm going to go to fill with placeholder text. So if you haven't written this yet, or you don't want to do it till later, you can just, for now, fill it with placeholder text just to kind of get a sense of graphically how it's going to read. Okay, so now we have some descriptive text laid out, and I'm going to go ahead and make a new page. So if I go to the Pages panel and make a new page, it should automatically place it kind of in order. Again, you can see that the page numbers will automatically fill. And then I want to place like the first image from this project. So I am going to just use an example project. So let's say I had an image of a concept model or something like that. So in order to place images in InDesign, I can drag them from my File Explorer into InDesign, and you should see a little thumbnail of what the image is. And then I want to click and drag, and that will allow me to size the image while I'm placing it. If I don't hit anything on the keyboard, it'll keep that image proportional. So I want to make sure I'm just clicking and dragging. So something like that. And then in order to resize images in InDesign, it's important to know that there are every image you place has two boundaries. So right now you can see the outline is blue, right? So as I'm adjusting this boundary, this is actually what's called the cropping boundary. So it's not going to resize my image, it's just going to crop it. So if I have images that I want to crop, I can easily do that here. But if I want to resize it, so first let me reset the cropping boundary to the size of the image. Again, I can do that by double-clicking on the grips to just reset the boundary to the image itself. If I double-click inside of it, you'll see that the outline is turned orange. So now I'm adjusting the image size, right? If I want to adjust both at the same time, I click on the image, I can hold Control and Shift on the keyboard, click and drag, and it will adjust my cropping boundary and my image at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to set it something like that. I also want to give this a title. So I'm going to make a copy of my project title, line it up. I'm going to right justify it, so change the type, right justify. I'm going to call this my concept model. I can spell. And I'm going to apply maybe title 2, right? Because this isn't the title of the project, it's just the image that we're looking at here. So I'm going to apply kind of a less significant character style to that one. Okay. Now I'm going to continue on with this project. So I will make another couple of pages. Okay. So on the next page, let's say I wanted to show the kind of rendering for this project. I should also point out that you can place images by going File and Place. And this will get you to the same exact place as if you just drag them in from Explorer. So I'm going to line this up to my layout. Okay, and then another really quick and useful tool. So if I have several images that I want to lay out, and I want them to be kind of evenly spaced and sized. There's an easy tool in InDesign for doing that. So again, I'll go to File, Place, and this time let's say I want to select two images at once that I want to be the same size and kind of evenly spaced. So I'll select both by holding Control on the keyboard, click Open, and you can see that my little thumbnail says I have two images in the stack. So by default, if I just click and drag, it'll let me place them one at a time. If I hold Control and Shift on the keyboard, you'll see my cursor change to like a little 6-box layout. And then I'll click and drag, and you can see what it's doing is laying out multiple images at the same time. So I'll do something like that, and you can see it's placed both the images at the same scale and with an even spacing, and that works for up to 6 images at a time. Now I'm also going to reset the cropping boundary here. So I'm going to set these kind of above on my page. And let's say I wanted to make them both a little bit bigger. I could just select them both at the same time, Control Shift, and scale them at the same time. And that way it's sort of easy to keep them evenly scaled. So again, as I mentioned before, as you're laying out, you'll notice that you have the blue outlines, and you'll notice that a lot of your images look really crappy, right? So this is the kind of low quality, low resolution preview that InDesign uses to like help us work faster, to make the program run faster. So if I want to toggle into like what this would look like as a printed out thing, I could go to View, Overprint Preview, give it a couple of seconds, and it should show me like a high quality kind of preview of what my page would be. And so we can get a better sense of what the outline or what the layout really is by doing it that way. Okay, so I'm going to toggle back because I want to work quickly, and I'm also going to give these images a couple titles. I should also point out that you can easily spell check in InDesign. If you hit Control and I on the keyboard, it will do a kind of little spell check just like Microsoft Word does. So I can check my spelling. And if I do this without any particular text box selected, then it will check all the, it'll run through all the text that's in my document. So I'm going to give these a couple quick labels. Just to describe what they are. I'm going to give myself a little bit of space in between the image and the font, right? So we can space things in InDesign by using the arrow keys, up and down, left and right. Also, if you hold Shift and use the arrow keys, it'll move them further, and that's a kind of easy, quick way that I found to like give it an even amount of space. So I just held Shift and hit up once, and I'm going to use that spacing everywhere in my document to kind of be consistent. Let's say, so I also left this space over on the bottom. So let's say I wanted to add a little bit of descriptive text and just talk about what's going on with the images on this page. So I'm just going to make another text box, set it to text in my character styles. Go to type, fill with placeholder text. Now let's say I wanted to use both sides of the page. So I'm going to make a copy of this text box. And let's say I wanted the text from this one to just flow into the next text box. So there's an easy, quick way to do that. I will select the text box. I'm going to go to this big square at the bottom, click on it, And you'll see it's kind of giving me a little thumbnail preview of the text in there. I'll click in the next text box. And so now if I go to fill with placeholder text, any text I write in here will just flow into the next text box. And so I can easily continue writing from one page or from one box to the other without having to copy and paste a whole bunch. Okay, let's move on to the next page. So I'm going to lay out a couple of orthographic drawings now. Hey, say you have this kind of section image of your project, for example, with this one, I really only want to show part of this section. So I'm going to use my cropping boundary and reset it to the kind of extents that I want to show. And then from there I can line it up to my guides, use Control-Shift to scale image and cropping boundary. And I can use that to kind of edit the information that I want to show. So I'm also going to place my plan on this page. It's important when you're dragging stuff in or placing stuff. So I'm dragging in a new image right now. If I drop it in this existing text box, what will happen is it'll just replace the text box. Or I'm sorry, not the text box, the image. So if I drag it and place it, so it's replaced that image that I've already laid out. So I just want to make sure that when I'm placing new stuff, I'm dropping it somewhere that's not on an existing text box or image box. Okay, so I'm going to try and line this guy up to my section. So I'll reset my cropping boundary to the extents of the image. And then I can kind of line up those extents to parts of my section. Okay, and so now this plan is kind of scaled to this plan down here. So I'll move it up a little bit, give it some space. Now I have in this image some dashed lines, excuse me, that are meant to kind of line up from one plan and section to the next. And so because this image is a PNG, it has a transparent background. So what I want is to place this plan underneath this image, so that those dashed lines kind of go over the top of the plan. So again, just like in Illustrator, I'll go select the image, go to Window, oh I'm sorry, not that. Select the image, right click, Arrange, and go Send to Back. And you can see now the dashed lines are showing up on top of the plan. So now this image in the workspace is above that image, so you can kind of line them up. Okay, so I'm going to switch back into the crappy preview mode, and I'll give myself a couple titles. So I'm going to say level 2. Line that up to my level 2 plan. I'm going to label my section and let's say for this one, because it's on a black background, I want to change that text color to white, so I'll just select it, go to color, click on the little T, set it to 0. So now that text is white. And I'm also going to change these into slightly bigger text style. So I'm going to use title 3, character style I mean, and that way they're more easily legible. The other thing that I want to add is, if you look at my plan and my sections, so I've got little numbers that are kind of defining what each space is. So I also need to make a legend or a key, so that I can reference that when I'm trying to like read this plan and figure out what each space is. So I'm going to make another text box. I honestly don't remember what most of these are, so I'm just going to make some stuff up. And so on and so forth. And I'm going to set that to, I'm going to define a new character style for this, because I want it to be a little bit smaller. I want it to be less prominent than some of my titles and stuff. So I'm going to make that a smaller font. I'm going to define a new character style. I'm going to call this legend. Okay. And then I can use that across pages anywhere that I need to apply a legend. Again, I could, oops. So you can see it runs really slowly when you're in the high quality or the overprint preview. So if I wanted to add some text to this page, I could also just go up here and copy. So I'll select both, Control C to copy it, go down to this page, and instead of just pasting, which would put it in the middle of the page, I can go to Edit, Paste in Place. And this will place the copied text object in the same exact spot on this page as it was on that page. So I can easily repeat my layout from one page to the other that way. Okay, and I'm going to do one more layout, one more spread. So for this one, I'm going to put a couple diagrams. So I'm going to place this again. I'm going to line it up best I can. Give myself a title, exploded XM. Title T. And I'll place one more rendering on this page. So I'm going to crop this one just a little bit. Okay. And again, I could copy and paste any descriptive text, or paste in place any descriptive text I want. And that's my layout. So just want to point out one quick thing. So again, because we put these dots on another layer, you can see they're showing up on top of the images that we've put in our spreads. And you can see because I made them a different color, they're contrasting and they're standing kind of apart from the images. So if they were black, obviously they wouldn't really show up here. So that's just an important thing to make sure you set up correctly. The other thing is when you're done, you also want to add one more page, which is going to act as the back cover. And I'll explain why when we go to print. So I'm going to add one more page at the end of the document. Again, I'm going to apply my B master because I don't want the header and footer on that back cover. And so when we go to print this thing, when we go to print for the hard copy, or the physical copy, what we're going to do is print a booklet so that it kind of organizes the pages in the right way, in the right order, for like a saddle stitch book. But before we do that, I want to show you guys just how to like export this thing and make sure that it's saved. So one thing that's important, well, let's just print it first. So I can go to File, I can save it as something. I'll call this, so I'll save the InDesign file itself. I also want to print a PDF. So you guys are required to submit a digital PDF and a packaged InDesign document. So for now, if I just go to File and Print, I can print to a PDF. And in the print dialog, you'll see I can either export pages or I can export spreads. And so if I'm exporting spreads, I'll go to I'll go to spreads. What I'll end up with is actually both pages laid out. So again, an individual page is 8.5 by 11. The two pages together are 11 by 17. And so if I select to print to spreads, I would then go to Setup, go to paper size, and change into 11 by 17. And you can see it's going to give you a little preview of like how one page fits on that paper size. So I also want to adjust the orientation so we can see our two pages are going to fit. Our whole spread is going to fit on a 11 by 17. And then I'll click print. And so I'll call this my PDF. Save it. And the other thing that I'll mention briefly, as this is exporting, is so when you place stuff in InDesign, for example, like images like this, it doesn't actually put them or save them in the InDesign file. So we'll look real quick. So this is what we're going to get if we print like that, right? So we'll get an 11 by 17 PDF that's going to show the whole spread, the whole page layout with all the information. Okay. So as I was saying, we also want to create what's called a package, an InDesign package. So when I place images in InDesign, it doesn't actually save them in the InDesign document, right? So if I went into my File Explorer and like I moved this image to somewhere else, so I'm going to paste it in another folder. What? Okay, so I pasted it in another folder. Now if we go back to InDesign, you can see what's happened to this image is a little red circle with a question mark has kind of popped up in one of the corners. If I hover over it, it says missing, click to relink. So because this image isn't actually saved in my InDesign file, when I moved it, it lost the reference. So when you print from InDesign, when you print to a PDF, for example, InDesign will go and it'll find those files and it'll kind of embed them in the PDF at the resolution that you've put them in the layout. And if the links are missing, you'll get some really low-res, like crappy images, right? Because it doesn't actually have the full quality version of this image. It just has the low-quality preview. So we can easily see in InDesign where this is happening using the links panel. The links panel will show you all the images that are in your document, and it'll tell you if they're missing. So I can also I can double click on them. I can go to Edit Original, which would open it up in Photoshop or Illustrator. I can go to Link, and it'll take me in my document to where that image is. And I can go to these little links buttons, and I can relink them. So I moved this file, right? And now it's telling me, oh, I don't know where to find it. If I select that in the links panel, click on the little chain link icon, so relink, and then I can navigate to where I saved that file, or where I moved it to. Click open. And you can see that my little missing link thing went away. So a good practice after you do a presentation board in InDesign or a portfolio in InDesign is to make what's called a package. So let's say I'm done with this portfolio. I've saved it, but I also want to make a little file that has all the images that I've used in one folder, so that if I ever need to go back and mess with it, or if I remember looking for the individual images, I can remake this portfolio in InDesign, even if I've moved some of the images around on my computer. So I'll go to File, I'll go to Package, and I'll click Package. I can just click Continue here. It's going to ask me where I want to save it, so that's the same folder. I'll click Package. And it's going to take a little while, and basically all it's doing is it's saving an InDesign file. It's saving all my fonts, so if the font I used doesn't exist on another computer, it'll be able to find that font. And it's saving all the images that I used in my layout in one folder. And so once I've saved the package of this, I can always go back and recreate this portfolio if I need to, or if I need to find any of those images. So we'll give it just a second. Okay, and so now if I go to that folder where I saved my package, you can see it made a new folder, and if I go into that folder, you can see it saved a PDF. So it saved a PDF of this document. It saved the InDesign file, and it made a new folder with all the images that I used in my layout in one place. So this little folder is going to contain everything I need to recreate that InDesign folder. Now this is going to be a pretty large file. So what I also want to do is right-click, and I'm going to make an archive. And so the way that I archive this file is I will go to, I'll right-click on it, select it, right-click, go to Send To, and you'll see this little option, compressed or zipped folder, and I'll click on that, and it will make a new version of it that's a .zip. So this is what's called an archive, and basically it'll just reduce the file size. So if I look at the file size, it's 150 megabytes. This one is only 92 megabytes. So that's going to help us save space. So the .zip folder is what you want to upload on D2L, along with the PDF. Now the last piece of the puzzle is actually printing the booklet. So as I mentioned, you want to do a saddle stitch, which is what these holes are for. So stitching through those holes and kind of sewing the pages together, or stapling them together. In order to do that, in order to do a saddle stitch, we got to print this document so the pages are in a certain order. And I have a little preview of this. If we go, here we go. So you can see what will happen is, because for example the one side of the front cover would be printed on the same page as the back cover, there's a way in InDesign to print our book so that the order of pages is set up so that it automatically combines them in the right order for saddle stitching. And I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, but I'll show you how to do it. And if you print this way, you'll find that your saddle stitching will work. So what I want to do is, instead of going to File Print, I'm going to go File Print Booklet. And I'll see this little dialog pop up, and it'll say Booklet Type. And so I'm going to go to 2-up Saddle Stitch. And if I click on Saddle Stitch, and I'll go to Preview, so you can see it's putting the back cover, or the front cover with the back cover. It's putting page 2 with page 11, page 10 with page 3. And the purpose here is that I can kind of print the full spread and kind of stack them up, sew them together, and then they'll be in the right order. So because they're stacked and the pages are printed across a full spread or a full piece of paper, when I sew this together, the pages will be in the right order. So I'm going to go to Print, and I can print directly to my printer, or I can print to a PDF. So this will be my saddle stitch. And you should see it pop up in here. So give it just a couple more seconds. Okay, and when we're done, so we'll be left with a document that's sorted in the right order for our saddle stitch. So I made one mistake, which was I didn't set up the paper size correctly. So, the purpose of a saddle stitch is to be able to print 2 pages across one large sheet, right? So we want to print 2 pages on each 11 by 17. So when I print to booklet, so File, Print Booklet, I also want to make sure that I'm setting the paper size so that it will print 2 pages on one sheet. And I'll do that just by going to print settings, same dialog as the printer, and I'll change it to 11 by 17. You can see the orientation is wrong, so I'll change it to the other orientation, and you can see now it's working correctly. So that's what we want. We want 2 pages printed on one piece of paper. So now if I go to print, and I will just overwrite okay, and so now this is what we want, right? So it's going to automatically pair the pages in the right order, so that if we print, and keep in mind you want to print two-sided when you do this, so you want to make sure, if I go to File, Print, when I'm actually printing to the printer, I want to make sure I'm choosing the option Print on both sides. I also want to make sure my paper size is right. So I would go to Properties, Paper Size 11 by 17. So again, if we look at the preview, we can see it's showing the full page. And then it's going to print the correct spreads in the right order on the right side of the piece of paper if we print this booklet. Okay. That is the end of the tutorial. Thank you.